All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful framework for getting things done, and it all comes from Augustin Argelich Casal's fantastic book, Analyze, Act, Advance. So, I want to kick things off with a pretty intense image from the book. Picture this. It's September 1st, 1939, literally the first day of World War II. You've got this Polish cavalry brigade, famous for their skill and speed, and they're ordered to charge an enemy position with swords drawn. But the enemy they were charging wasn't what they thought. German General Heinz Guderian wrote about it later. I mean, can you imagine? This incredibly brave cavalry didn't understand what they were up against. They had all the courage in the world, but they brought swords to a tank fight. It was a brutal, tragic mismatch between their tools and the reality of the situation. And this is where the book really brings it home for us. Argelich uses this stark story to ask a question that's at the core of everything we're talking about today. Are we doing the same thing? Are we charging at our modern challenges, in our careers and our lives, with outdated tools, maybe refusing to see what's really in front of us? According to the book, this feeling of being stuck, this sense of crisis that so many of us feel, it's not really about the economy. That's just the symptom, right? That's the fever. The actual disease, the root cause, is something much, much deeper. So Argelich borrows this idea from the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl to really diagnose the problem. He argues that we're dealing with a crisis of values, a widespread lack of meaning and motivation. It's like we're all just going through the motions, stuck in what Frankl called an existential vacuum. And that passivity, that's what's really holding us back. Okay, so if the big problem is something inside of us, then we've got to look at what's actually holding us back. The book points out a few of these hidden barriers that are, let's be honest, pretty common to all of us. First up, the classic, procrastination. We all know this one, right? That little voice that says, "Oh, I'll get to it tomorrow." But the book frames it in a really interesting way. It's a trap where we use endless analysis as an excuse not to act. We tell ourselves we just need a little more data, a little more time, when what we're really doing is avoiding the hard work of actually starting. Then there's envy, and we're not just talking about wanting your neighbor's new car. The book describes it as this really corrosive force, where people would rather see everybody lose than see one person succeed. It's that, if I can't have it, no one can mindset, and it absolutely poisons any chance of collective success. And this next one, man, the author uses this perfect metaphor. He talks about how in his own neighborhood, jewelry stores selling diamonds, a diamond is forever, or a symbol of permanence, they've all been replaced by lingerie shops. They represent something immediate, fleeting, low commitment. It's a really vivid picture of how we've become afraid to take risks and make those long-term promises that lead to real growth. And finally, we've got good old-fashioned conformity. It's that deep desire to just stay in our comfort zone. The book sums it up with this funny but kind of sad old prayer, "Let me remain like I am today." It's basically a prayer for staying stuck, a fear of change that keeps us anchored right where we are, even if where we are isn't working anymore. Okay, so procrastination, envy, fear, conformity. That's a pretty heavy list, right? It sounds kind of bleak, but here's the good news. This is where we pivot from the problem to the solution, and it all starts with a single, incredibly powerful choice. The book makes it super clear. The very first step is also the most personal. It's a choice. Drawing on Viktor Frankl's experiences again, we're reminded that even when we can't control what happens to us, we can always control our attitude about it. The decision to move forward, to advance, it starts right between your ears. And JFK's famous speech about going to the moon just captures this perfectly. Think about it. He didn't say, "We'll try," or "We hope to go." He said, "We choose to go." He framed it as a proactive, deliberate decision to go after a massive challenge. That's the whole point. We have to actively choose to move forward. So you've made the choice. You've got the attitude. Now what? Well, an attitude without action is just a nice thought. You need the right tools. And the book gives us a whole toolkit for turning that choice into smart, effective action. Now, this is a really important distinction the book makes. There's a huge difference between taking a decision and making one. You know, taking a decision sounds kind of passive, right? It's based on a whim or emotion. But to make a decision, that's an active process. It's about building a conclusion from logic and analysis, not just grabbing the easiest option. So, how do you actually make a decision? The book lays out this really clear 5-step process. First, you define the problem. What are you actually trying to solve here? Step 2, you identify and analyze all your options. And yeah, that includes the option to do nothing. Third, you choose the best one. Fourth, and this is huge, you actually implement it. And finally, step 5, you watch the results and you adjust as you go. It's a real discipline. Okay, another huge tool here is innovation, but maybe not in the way you're thinking. The book gives a very practical, down-to-earth definition. Innovation isn't necessarily inventing the next big thing. It's simply about finding a different way to do something that makes you more efficient. It's about improvement, not just invention. And this quote just nails it. Research might take a ton of money and a fancy lab, but innovation? That's about investing the knowledge you already have to create more value. This is huge because it means we can all be innovators. You have knowledge, I have knowledge, we can all innovate. Now, this is super important. This is not a one-time fix. You don't just make one good decision or innovate once, and then you're done forever. To really advance, you have to get into a continuous cycle of improvement. The book brings up this fantastic model for this. It's called the OODA loop. It was actually developed for fighter pilots, which is pretty cool. It's a simple cycle. First, you observe what's going on. Then you orient yourself, analyzing what you're seeing. Next, you decide what to do, and then you act. The second you act, the situation changes, right? So you loop right back to the beginning and observe the new reality. It's this constant, dynamic way of adapting and improving. So let's wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways here? First, remember that the real crisis holding you back is probably internal. It's about values and passivity. You've got to overcome your own barriers like procrastination. The most important thing you can do is choose your attitude and proactively decide to move forward. From there, use the tools. Make your decisions. Don't just take them. Use the knowledge you already have to innovate. And finally, make it a cycle. Constantly observe, decide, and act. You know, in the end, the book lays it all out for us. The framework is here, the tools are ready to go. Remember that cavalry? They failed because they couldn't or wouldn't adapt their tools to reality. We have the tools to do so much better. So the only real question left, the one only you can answer, is, will you choose to use them?